today. This meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be recorded except where there are confidential or exempt items. If any member of the public attending the meeting objects to being filmed, please advise us immediately and we will ensure that they are not included in the filming. Members of the public and press may record, film or photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and press are not lawfully excluded from it. If you are intending to do so, please could you inform the committee clerk. May I please request that mobile phones are on silent and that your laptops are also switched to silent, please. If you hear the fire alarm, please leave the building immediately via the fire exits and make your way to the assembly point at Ipswich Town Football Ground. I would also just like to quickly acknowledge that Councillor Lawrence is not joining us tonight due to health grounds. We wish Councillor Lawrence very well and a full recovery. Can I move to the agenda, please? Item 1, apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. We have received apologies from Councillor Terry Lawrence, Councillor Janet Pearson, Councillor Ross Piper, Councillor Richard Winch, Councillor Jen Overett, Councillor Matthew Hicks, Councillor Terence Carter, Councillor Nicholas Harding and Councillor Colin Lay.
Thank you. Item 2, declaration of interests by councillors. The monitoring officer has granted Mid-Suffolk District councillors a dispensation to allow them to speak and to vote on matters concerning devolution and or local government reorganisation at all Mid-Suffolk District Council meetings where they may otherwise have a disclosable pecuniary interest, other registerable interest or non-registerable interest. Are there any other declarations of interest? Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a Suffolk County Council employee and you're aware of that. Just want to check. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 3, to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 19th of March 2025 for accuracy only. Are there any issues with accuracy? Councillor Davis?
Yeah, I have been in liaison with Henriette with regards to 113.21. So for transparency, that's been amended and corrected. Do you need me to read it out? You want me to read it out?
No, that's not necessary. Thank you very much, Councillor Davis.
I would like to propose the minutes.
Thank you very much. So Councillor Davis will propose. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Matheson. All those in favour? By show of hands. That is carried. Item 4, leaders' announcements. So I'd like to invite Councillor Mellon to make his announcements, please.
Thank you, Chair. So fairly short announcements today. The housing regulatory notice, which was issued to Baber and Mid-Suffolk in early 2023, has been officially removed in the last couple of weeks as we continue to build a stronger, more resilient housing service for our communities and council tenants. Over the last 2 years, the housing service has undertaken a comprehensive review and transformation of its building services, implementing some significant improvements. So we've established a new compliance team, created a dedicated repairs and maintenance team, implemented a new job management system, introduced new fleet and materials contracts and procured 30 new contracts across various service areas, as well as developing new policies and procedures to enhance service delivery. Now, we know there's still work to do, but I would like to recognise the good work of our teams in reaching this significant milestone, and it's very good news, I think. Plug-in Suffolk Car Club. I'm pleased to say that from this summer, residents and visitors to Mid-Suffolk will be able to book electric cars as part of an initial 18-month EV car club trial. So this is happening in 10 locations across Suffolk, and there'll be electric cars that can be booked by the minute, hour or day. And this includes 2 rentable electric cars placed, one in Crown Street in Stowmarket and one in Station Yard car park in Needham Market. And this is all thanks to a collaborative project with Co-Wheels, which is founded by the Suffolk public sector leaders and this includes us working with the other councils and police and health. So this is an innovative project which encourages drivers to shift to more sustainable modes of transport and reduce emissions without the cost of buying an electric vehicle, which can be a significant one. Now, Easter holidays are now underway, and activities are once again taking place across the district as part of the HAV programme, Holiday Activities and Food Programme. There's everything from arts and crafts to adventure days on the programme, and lots for youngsters to enjoy, and the details are on the community section of our website. And then finally, just to confirm, the celebration of the life of Councillor Rachel Eban will take place at 2:30 p.m. on Wednesday the 23rd of April at Hawley Park, and all are welcome. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Mellon. Would anybody like to raise a point for clarification? No? Thank you. Item 5, to receive notifications of petitions in accordance with Council Procedure Rules.
None received.
Thank you. Item 6, questions by the public in accordance with Council Procedure Rules.
None received.
Item 7, questions by councillors in accordance with Council Procedure Rules.
None received, Chair.
Thank you. I'm going to move on to item 8, devolution for Norfolk and Suffolk, our council's consultation response. I would like to invite Councillor Mellon to introduce paper MC 2455 and move the recommendation in the report.
Thank you, Chair. So we are in a process of change here, and this is one significant item of that change process, the proposal to have a mayor for Norfolk and Suffolk. There's a consultation period open, and we have a draft consultation response in the papers. This has been drawn up from the work that we did on the workshop in Stowmarket and also the one in Hadley. So this has had member input into it, and it's for us to sort of review that and discuss it today. So on devolution, we had the white paper that the government published on the 16th of December. That's Appendix B in the papers. And this talks about devolution to mayoral strategic authorities and proposed the devolution priority programme. On the 5th of January, we were told that we are part of that programme, Suffolk and Norfolk. Initially, this will be what they call an MCCA, a mayoral combined county authority, and eventually this will morph into a strategic authority as we go through the process of local government reorganisation. And this requires the consent of Suffolk County Council and Norfolk County Council, and then there'll be secondary legislation laid, and this should lead to the election of a mayor next May 2026. And all the details of that are in the papers. If you look on the, paragraph 4.1 through to 4.16.6 of the paper that's been presented. And I don't propose to go through all that because it's all there on the table of papers. So what we're going to see, very likely, there will be powers and funding coming down from government to a new regional authority with a mayor, an elected mayor. The benefits of this are someone having a strategic overview and leadership over the two counties. But I think we have to be very clear that this is the government's agenda, and they have a mandate, newly elected, and are very much keen to bring this through. Now, that much we know, but there's still a lot which is unclear about this process. We don't know how much funding the mayor will have yet. We don't know what role a mayoral precept or possibly mayoral community infrastructure levy could play in the funding that the mayor could take in. We don't exactly know how the mayoral role will interact or maybe subsume the current role of the two police and crime commissioners that we have for Suffolk and Norfolk. The government's made much of the fact that residents are currently paying a two-tier premium for local government, district and county. But guess what? They are setting up a two-tier system with a mayoral system and unitaries underneath. So I'm not entirely sure whether we're going to reap the benefit of doing away with the two-tier premium if there's going to be a different two-tier thing. Anyway, we have this consultation and we have the draft response that's been worked up by officers, and that is based, as I said, on the views expressed at the workshop for members in Stowmarket and Hadley. There are only 7 questions in that consultation. But there's not a question that says, would you like a mayor or would you not like a mayor? Because they're not asking us that, they're asking us some different things. And we have Appendix A, the draft response there. So I'm just going to go through this really briefly. Question 1, to what extent do you agree or disagree that establishing a mayoral combined county authority over the proposed geography will deliver benefits to the area? And the draft response we put down is that we neither agree nor disagree. Now, this is because there are lots of potential benefits, but there are concerns that the powers and decision-making being drawn up by the mayor could lead to less local influence on decisions. Question 2, to what extent do you agree or disagree with the proposed governance arrangements for the mayoral combined county authority? And here we've said we disagree. There is concern that the local voice and the local representation will be lost in the regional prioritisation and decision-making. And without local representation, there's potential democratic deficit. Question 3. Working across the proposed geography through the mayoral combined county authority, how will that support the economy of the area? So what we've said is we agree that there will be benefits to the economy. A kind of unified economic strategy could bring actually significant benefits. And in fact, Norfolk and Suffolk used to work together under the old New Anglia LEP. And that was, of course, broken up, but it did actually function quite well, and therefore there could be benefits to working together again. Question 4. To what extent do you agree or disagree that working across the proposed geography through the mayoral combined county authority will improve social outcomes in the area? And again, we disagree because there's insufficient clarity about how this would happen. And the stuff that we do at the district, homelessness prevention, affordable housing, temporary accommodation, that does need ring fencing from the bigger budget items like social care. Question 5, working across the proposed geography through an MCCA will improve local government services in this area. And we've said we disagree here. There is a risk of more bureaucracy. Services delivered at the local district level could potentially go up to the regional level, and then there would be slower, less responsive to local needs, and rural deprivation, which is a particular issue in areas, is not easy seen when you look at the statistics. So there's a risk of funding going to the areas that are more urban. Question 6, working across the proposed geography through an MCCA will improve the local natural environment and overall national environment. Here we've said we neither agree nor disagree. It potentially could work better, but the commitments in the current, but there's not firm commitments in the current proposal, and there needs to be a really strategic approach, particularly to flooding. And then lastly, question 7, coming to the end, Chair. Working across the proposed geography will support the interests and needs of local communities and reflect local identities. And I think this is perhaps the key one for me, that we said we disagree with this. The proposed framework would not represent all the diverse communities within the geographical area of Norfolk and Suffolk. And it's not clear how residents will be engaged and empowered. Particularly that we have concerns about the voting system of first past the post. Because in a field of 4 or 5 candidates, the winner could be elected with a really small percentage of support, maybe even as low as 25%. Previously, mayors have been voted in using the supplementary vote system, which means that people have to gather support across the whole political spectrum. So that is a real concern. So this is the draft response. We're here to debate it today. We're here to contribute and maybe disagree with these. And essentially, we're not going to capture everyone's view in this place, but everyone here has an individual right and can put their own response in. Collectively, as a council, we're going to agree a joint response, and that's the process we're trying to follow now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Milne. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Scarf?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm very happy to second this, and I would like to echo that the workshops on this were actually very informative and really appreciated by members, and I think we all felt really involved in being able to ask questions and get answers, well, some answers to the questions, but not necessarily all the answers that we wanted, as the leader has said. So very happy to second.
Thank you very much. We will now move to questions. Councillors may ask as many questions as they wish. However, they must be relevant to the subject under discussion and must be a question. Would anybody like to start off? Councillor Linders?
Yeah, I wonder if you know when we will get the government's response to these consultations. Thank you.
Chair, if it's okay, I'll refer this to the Chief Executive.
Thank you, Chairman. Formally, no, we don't. We know the running order, so we anticipate that once the consultation is closed, civil servants will take probably 2 to 3 weeks in order to evaluate the responses to the consultation before putting something in front of the Minister. The process then involves the Minister doing a right round of all government departments, because devolution touches on so many elements of current government arrangements. Once that process has been completed, then that will come back to the Minister for a formal decision, and then statutory instruments will need to be laid. So we don't know the formal timescales, but ultimately it will have to be relatively swift, because the expectation is that a mayor will be elected next May. And so that will have to be a quick process to enable that process in terms of elections to be able to happen.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Councillor Walters?
Thank you, Chair. Question which might get deferred again. Will we find out the number of people that have taken part in the consultation across Norfolk and Suffolk?
It was just a look then, wasn't it? I don't know for certain. I suspect we can ask. I can certainly tell you how many people were at the consultation event last week. So there was a single consultation event held at the Novotel here in Ipswich for all residents from Norfolk and Suffolk. That was attended by approximately 26 people for the first hour and about 4 for the second hour. I'm told anecdotally that the response rate thus far from Norfolk and Suffolk, though, has been higher than other parts of the country. It's entirely speculation on my part, but I suspect that's because we already had county deals being considered this time last year. And so there was probably a greater awareness of devolution in Norfolk and Suffolk compared to some other parts of the country. But we haven't got a proper sense of numerically exactly how many members of the public does that actually involve. We can ask, and we'll see whether or not they provide that detail.
Councillor Whitehead?
So could I just ask, it talks about consultation for mayoral in Norfolk and Suffolk, but presumably every area that's having a mayor imposed on them is having the same consultation questions, and will there be different answers for different areas, or will it just be a combined? I mean, presumably they're not going to change the rules for mayors between different areas, are they? That's my question.
Yeah, as far as I understand it, they're using a common set of questions but tailored to each of the areas where in the DPP. They are, as far as I understand it, hoping to move forward with a kind of a package deal for each area. Now, places like Manchester, where they've had devolution and a mayor for some time, are now into their nth iteration of that deal, and they've had more powers and funding as things go along. But I think this group will have a kind of essentially a package deal off the shelf for each area, roughly the same. I think that's right, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely correct. I was just going to add ever so slightly. So we are part of the Devolution Priority Programme. So those councils' areas that are part of that programme are the ones that are being consulted at the moment. So it's not across the whole of England yet. The Minister will need to make separate decisions in relation to each area. So it is a common process, as the leader describes. It's a common set of questions. It's a common timescale for the Devolution Priority Programme. But technically, the Minister will need to make a decision separately for Norfolk and Suffolk compared to those other areas on the programme. It does feel highly unlikely, though, that whilst he may make individual decisions, I can't see a world where the decision is to implement in one part and not in another part, not least because government have already made it very clear their ambition is to have mayors and devolution across the whole of England. So I think it's more a case of in what order. And as the leader has outlined, the consultation doesn't pose the question, should this happen or not? The Minister has effectively made it clear that it is highly likely that this will happen, but there is some nuance to understand the exact details. So there might be some change around the governance arrangements from one area to another area, but whether it actually happens, I think, is, as far as you can consider these things, a foregone conclusion.
Councillor Mansell.
Thank you, Chair. I've actually got two questions. One is based a bit on the Chief Executive's answer to Councillor Walter's question. And I just wondered whether we as a council were doing anything to encourage members of the public to be part of this consultation. I've just opened up Mid Suffolk's web page. It's not on the front page, which means someone's got to search for it. So I just wondered if there was any active sort of public awareness that we were doing on it. Shall I do that one first and then ask my other question?
Chief Executive.
So yes, we are actively promoting it, and particularly through social media. We've made sure that all of our towns and parishes are aware of it taking place. We've held separate events specifically for those towns and parishes so that we could talk them through and brief them about what it was about. Because it's not overtly clear. The consultation itself contains quite a lot of jargon, and so we wanted to make sure that it was clear what it is and encourage participation as much as we could. Similarly with the event last week, again we pushed that out and republished that so that people could attend if they wished to do so. Ultimately we have been slightly cautious because we're mindful it's not our consultation. So we have stopped short of making our residents think that we are doing this. But we have also tried to make sure that they are aware and that they engage with it as much as possible. It's fair to say it is a significant change, but I would also say it's quite a dry change. And so I suspect for the majority, it is unlikely that they're going to spend their time investing in responding, particularly when they cannot answer the question, as the leader said, whether they actually want it to happen or not.
Yeah, my other question is, given that it seems inevitable that we're going to get this mayor for Norfolk and Suffolk, and there is some uncertainty about the exact nature of the powers and the responsibilities of that mayor. Could it be that the Norfolk and Suffolk mayor might have a different package of responsibilities stroke powers than a mayor for another combined authority, or whatever they're called?
No. So the change from the past, and the reason why the government moved away from county deals, and similarly the arrangements that have happened in places like Manchester, as the leader alluded to, is because each one of those was separately negotiated and was referred to as a deal as a result. So the amount of power, the amount of money was bespoke to each area. There are benefits to that because you get absolutely something that is a bespoke package for that area, but the government's view is there are significant disadvantages to that because it means that residents in one area are not fairly receiving the same as other parts of the country, and also significantly it's slow because it's involved separate negotiations on each occasion. So the shift away has been to say that the powers will be identical across England, and because of that, and exactly as you described, we don't yet know definitively what those powers will be because they don't exist yet. They will be coming out as part of the English Devolution Bill, which has not yet been published. And so the current consultation is under the existing legislation that would create the mayor. The existing legislation is being used to do that, but the powers will then likely follow, because it's unlikely the bill will become law in time. So the powers themselves for the mayor and for the combined authority will follow once the new legislation is enacted. And that new legislation, because it's enshrined in legislation rather than statutory instruments, will apply to everywhere. So every one of the new mayors and combined authorities will have the same suite of powers and functions. The expectation, although not yet confirmed until June, is that the amount of money that will be provided to each mayor will similarly be consistent, not identical. We don't yet know exactly what that formula is, but the indications through the consultation event last week were that it's highly likely to be done on a per capita basis. So not identical for every mayor, because not every mayor represents the same number of people, but worked out on a per capita basis so that it's fair across the whole of the country. The exception to what I've described, though, is all of those areas that have already got a mayor, because it is likely that the powers and functions that they've already negotiated, because they've had multiple rounds of negotiation in many cases, Manchester being the main example, means that they have got a track record and therefore are trusted more than new mayors yet. And so they have actually got slightly higher powers, slightly further powers than everywhere else. Everyone else will start on the same base level, and government's expectation is that over time they will get to the same place as everywhere else, so it will even out. And similarly, the expectation is that mayoral powers can be built upon. So it's not once and done. It's the case that any area can say in the future, well, actually, we think it would be incredibly helpful if mayors had this power. That's something they can put in front of government. Government can consider it. The expectation is government would pilot it. And if that pilot goes well, that it then would be rolled out to everywhere. So you've got this constant initial levelling up to the level that other mayors have already got, and then consistent expansion over time so that everybody expands in the same way at the same time. I hope that helps.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Councillor Rowe.
I think you might have kind of just answered this question. Indeed, we don't know. But with, for example, question 4, which talks about improving social outcomes and like health inequalities, do we know whether there's been any conversations about how changes to like the nationalisation of trains and the changes to NHS England, then because the mayor's responsibilities are infrastructure and health, and you have then a kind of concentration in one person potentially to then be kind of making decisions about that, and kind of how then, so kind of has anything been talked about how it will address those when you have essentially one person making a decision and their views having a lot of weight potentially?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I absolutely agree with you that there's a concern in this whole process of all power being concentrated in one person and then having a lot of responsibility. As far as I understand, where the government is trying to go with this eventually is kind of wider public service reform that would align services, not just local government, potentially health, preventative work, along the same boundaries. And I can see that potentially there will be some benefits from that over the longer term. But I think it will be quite a long while before we might see those. So that is a bit of a concern, yeah. I don't know if the Chief Executive's got something to add to that.
Would you like to add anything?
Just briefly, exactly as the leader says, that the government's trying to get to kind of a one ring to rule them all approach in specific geographies. You can see with the decision that's already been made to disband NHS England and to cut the budgets of the integrated care boards, that is driving, all of this is connected. It's not necessarily described in a connected way, but all of it is connected, and you can see how those dots are beginning to align. Again, just coming from some of the questions at the consultation event last week, the civil servants were very clear, however, that they're not going to do anything that puts people's safety and health at risk. And so they would see those changes, for example, in terms of health arrangements aligning to the new mayoral boundaries as taking, as the leader says, taking more time in order to be done carefully rather than being forced through in one big bang approach. And similarly with transport, for example, the expectation is the mayor won't necessarily have the budget and the powers in relation to everything in their patch, because some things inevitably, and transport's a good example, operate on a bigger geography. But the expectation is that for something like Great British Rail or Great British Energy, that when it comes to wanting to understand what is most important in Norfolk and Suffolk, those larger bodies will look to the answer, look to the mayors for the answer to that question. So the mayors will be the ones that have set the list of priorities. So they may well determine, for example, in our context, that the junction at Copdock is the most important thing that should be invested in first. The relevant bodies will ask the question of the mayor. The mayor will say that's the priority and that's how it will get done. So they won't do absolutely everything. It's not devolution to that extent, but it is devolution in the sense of the power, as the leader says, the power and the energy being focused into a particular individual and the governance, as you can see within the consultation, then wrapping around that to provide a bit of balance.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, governance. I'm looking at paragraph 4.14, which sets out that districts will not be constituent members of the mayoral authority, but government expects effective levels of collaboration to be demonstrated between constituent members, basically county council, and district councils, and I wondered how that was going thus far, or if it hasn't started, at what point of the process do you think that might effectively, and I think effectively is in there somewhere as a word, take place? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Matheson. So this, essentially, this is the temporary state we'll end up in when we have an MCCA as we move forward with local government reorganisation and eventually the successor councils to the districts and boroughs, the unitaries, will be as part of that mayoral combined authority. There will be a period when we're in this sort of interim place where we're expecting collaboration, but almost have to sort of rely on the goodwill of the counties to provide it at that stage, before we eventually come into a position where we have a seat around the table. I think we can aim high and hope for the best.
Councillor Linders.
Thank you, Chair. I'm reading paragraph 4.11 where it says the mayor must always be part of a majority for decisions to be approved. Am I right in assuming that the mayor could then always block a decision? Is that how powerful he or she would be?
Yeah, that's what I understand. So the mayor always has to be on the winning side in any argument. From what I understand, the anticipation is that you're not going to have often a kind of fallout and a vote on things because there will be consensual agreement. But yes, if it does come down to a vote, the mayor's always got to be on the winning side. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Marriott.
What is known about the process by which the mayor will be chosen?
Thank you. Councillor Mellon?
I think, like any other election, there will be candidates selected by parties and possibly some independent candidates. I understand that the deposit that's got to be laid down is £10,000, of which 5,000 contributes towards the literature that goes out to all households, and there will be, I assume, people will have to collect a number of signatures. I'm not sure on that. Maybe the chief exec knows better, but it will be first past the post, according to what the government's told us. As I've said previously, I am concerned about that. There used to be at mayoral elections under the supplementary vote system. That was done away with in 2024 for whatever reason.
Any other questions? Any further questions? Councillor Walters.
Thanks, Chair. Following on from a couple of questions, 4.9, in deciding whether to implement, the government will need to be assured that it will improve the economic, social, environmental well-being of some or all of the people who live or work in the area, which seems a little bit, concerning. I wonder if we know what the metrics that the government are going to be using to measure those particular subjects, because if they're using the word some, that means that they are also saying that clearly some won't.
Bluntly, I don't think they'll be using any metrics. I think it's very clear. You could even go so far as to say some means more than one. So I think that's why I said earlier, it does feel very much as though this is happening. That test is not particularly high in terms of achieving it, as you can imagine. The responses to the consultation will inform that decision. There is a formal process, there is a formal legal process, and the Minister will need to satisfy themselves of those tests. But yes, it's not a numerical exercise, nor do they necessarily have to have rich evidence bank in order to reach that conclusion. I have been told that in the past, I think there have been judicial reviews to challenge some of these things. I don't know whether that has been directly tested, that element of it, through the courts. But given that this whole process is happening across the country as a whole, it wouldn't surprise me if one area at least ends up going through some element of legal challenge. But yes, the point being, will this improve the situation for some people? What's missing, of course, is does that mean some people are worse off as a result? Which, of course, is not the intention.
Thank you. Is that a hand, Councillor Patchett? No, thank you. Okay, so I think the questions have finished now, so we'll move to the debates. Councillors will be allowed to speak once for 3 minutes, and this will be timed. Councillor Richardson.
Thank you very much, Chair. I have a few points to make, but I will be brief. I think, firstly, I would just like to say, which I think it is something that Councillor Mellon has alluded to already, is just my frustration at the consultation that we are being asked to respond to, because frankly it's not a consultation, it's just a questionnaire. So I think it does, sadly, not bode well for this euphemistic engagement that the government will do over the course of the summer. But I do think that the way that we have structured our response is very sensible in providing both a narrative to accompany our response and setting of recommendations. As Councillor Mellon said, I don't think I can agree with everything that's written in this document, the voting system being one, but I do recognise that some of the recommendations contained within this response are particularly important. And if I just highlight some of the governance aspects are particularly strong, and I think they are welcome inclusions in this response. In other areas, I do find this consultation response a little bit more muddled, and in some cases seem to be attempting to preempt whatever decisions the Mayor might make. But I do appreciate that this document is seeking to summarise the views of dozens of councillors into a single coherent position, which is fundamentally a difficult thing to do, so I do recognise that. I said I'd be brief, so I mean, bluntly, I think it could have been stronger, a little bit more succinct and punchier in places, but I do agree with the broad thrust of what this document is trying to say. So I will give it my support, be voting in favour. Thank you, Chair.
Very much. Councillor Matheson.
Well, as it's very, very quiet, I will briefly say, firstly, a point of information. As members may recall, I'm chair of the Joint Audit Standards Committee, along with my co-chair from Baber, and we were approached at a recent meeting of regional audit chairs by Councillor Joanna Spicer, who's chair of the Suffolk Audit Committee, and she wanted to get audit chairs across Suffolk together to talk about these matters, and you'll see that the paragraph 4.13 actually explicitly mentions that there would need to be an audit committee, etc. So I think I welcome that approach, and we may need to also subsequently start engaging with Norfolk, and that sort of preparations for this change. And the other point I wanted to make about all this, really, and Councillor Mellon has alluded to it to some extent, that with 5, 6, 7 candidates, there's every likelihood that whoever's elected will get under 30% of the votes, and that the turnout, judging from other places and from the previous police elections, the turnout will not be wonderful. And that does mean it's quite likely that whoever's elected will be elected with only 10% of the electorate supporting them. And that seems to run strongly counter to the government's expressed intention and wish that electing these mayors will improve public trust in the local government process. And I think putting those figures together, it doesn't look good to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Walters.
Thank you, Chair. So Councillor Mansell mentioned earlier about how we published this and sought more engagement. I live in Stowmarket. I'm very active on social media for various different things that I do. I follow the council. I think I've probably seen one or two posts. I'm not saying they're not out there. They haven't come to me. I see more posters out and about for gigs at the John Peel Centre than I do about something that is possibly going to affect us from a democratic point of view, and it is that democracy that this worries me about. I take on board the Chief Exec's point. You know, this is probably going to happen. Well, it's not probably going to happen, it's definitely going to happen. And how effective will this consultation be? So, you know, I take that. But my real fear is that, you know, with the numbers that we're talking about that are going to engage in this, you know, an acceptable level of a meaningful consultation is 5%, and excellent response is 30%. So across Norfolk and Suffolk, that would be a combined 75,000 people responding at 5% and 450,000 at 30%. It'd be wonderful if we could get somewhere to that, or even 10,000 in the Mid-Suffolk and Baber district. So I think, you know, my worry is this is being done to us. We are not having any great say in it, and it's frankly wasting our time and taxpayers' money.
Councillor Marriott.
Just a quick point. I was watching the news the other day, and there was a mention of this, and it just in terms of improving local democracy, it was just on for about 10 seconds, and so I think the public need to really be informed, you know, by the media, by the national media, really, for them to effectively engage in it.
Thank you. Whilst I agree with what Councillor Walters has just said about you know, not wanting to promote this government consultation too much because it's not our consultation and it's being done to us, given that the figures that Councillor Matheson's talked about, you know, we're likely to end up with a mayor that has got a fairly low level of support amongst the general from the general public, and I think the whole thrust of the government's idea about this, they took in the introduction from the Prime Minister, I think it is, or some minister, it goes on about talking about local champions who understand local places, and leaders that are accountable to the public for delivering change and have the capacity that they need. Well, if we're getting such a low number of people who are actually going to vote in favour of any one particular voted in mayor, I just can't see how that's happening. So we want to try and maximise the number of people who do actually participate in the election of this mayor. And that's why I think it's important to publicise the consultation, because if people have responded to the consultation, it might stay in their mind in 15 months' time or whatever time it is we're going to have this election, that they might then vote for it, because they you know, it's important. I mean, it is being done to us, We don't seem to have any question about the governance or the way that this mayor is elected. It's not one of the questions they're asking. So I think it's really important that we do get the public to actually understand the process that is happening to them, so that we can try and maximise the number of people who come out on election day for this mayor. I think that's one of the most important things that I think we can do, because from what I've seen of this consultation stroke questionnaire, we're just answering a few questions, and what are they going to do about it? It sounds like they've already got their mind made up. It's going to happen, and they're just doing it as a sort of tick box exercise. So I think it seems to be our job to just make sure that the public are aware of it and actually come out on election day.
Thank you. Councillor Baker?
I just wanted to add a point from the point of view from officers. So across all of the councils, there are staff that work across all of the different councils, and they have quite a individual perspective because they're obviously working with the community. I think there should have been another layer of consultation for officers. That was kind of missed. It's obviously all lumped in with all the other members of the public. And I think actually the officers across all of the councils would have quite a helpful contribution to this. So that is a bit of a shame, and I don't know if there is any way of working that in as the process goes through.
Thank you. Councillor Stringer.
I'm going to make the shortest speech I've ever made in here, I think. I'm just going to go through the definition of devolution. It means that decision-making moves closer to the citizen and is more democratic. As set out in the earlier questionnaire, it isn't. We're responding with some constructive criticism. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Caston.
Thank you very much. I thought I'd just say a few words. I think this questionnaire, I found it quite difficult because there's so much you don't know. Looking through there, I think what we've come up with is probably the best we can do with the information we've got. I do seriously worry about the way things are going. This whole centralising things. Maybe it will be better for education, transport, healthcare, and things like that. But I don't really see that centralising these things has helped all that much previously. But economy is a difficult one. It all depends what they're looking at with economy. Like, for instance, like Stowmarket is one of probably 40 towns similar that would be within this combined authority. Would they know what's the best way to rejuvenate the town centre? Would they be able to look at parking and the way people shop, the industries, what they're there for, like we do when we do these economic strategies that we spend hours and hours looking at every aspect to try and do the best we can? I don't think so. But it does also, it strikes me as what did happen to democracy? We've got in the councils now, if somebody goes into a position and they do a bad job, they get taken out by their group. You can't possibly have someone that can't do the job very well in those systems. With MPs, it's a bit different. You have your MP, you can complain and everything. This seems a bit more of an MP type thing where they're in for that term. There's nothing you can do about it, and you've got to just wait to vote them out. So I just don't see how this is a better way to do things. I think this is a terrible way of doing things. But I'll support this document. I think it's a really good response to the questionnaire. Thank you.
Councillor Caston. Councillor Whitehead.
I just feel quite depressed and despondent about the whole thing. I mean, there's 7 questions here. We answer 1 as agreed, 2 as neither one way or the other, and 4 we disagree. Yeah, I'm pretty sure ultimately what will come out of the whole consultation will be what they wanted from the very start. So everything we're putting in here will be ignored. I mean, I think that, well, personally, I think there's been a couple of good examples of elected mayors in urban areas. So, for example, Andy Street in the West Midlands was a real passionate campaigner for his area and brought loads of money in, made loads of improvements. Personally, I think Boris Johnson, to get elected twice in London, he brought passion and enthusiasm to London in terms of inward investment and things like proper joined-up public transport. But you know, that's just a look. It's a lottery, really, what sort of mayor we get. I mean, we could get a truly ghastly and divisive figure like Sadiq Khan or the new mayor of the West Midlands, who, well, I think he makes the Invisible Man seem obtrusive, because I've seen nothing about him in the papers at all. And but the whole concept. Well, when I think about a rural mayor, my mind just turns to Boss Hogg of Hazard County. I can't get it out of my mind. And then whenever we talk about the MCCA, I want to sort of do the. You know, so every time it's been mentioned MCCA, I have to stop doing that. But the mayoral precept, you know, another layer of bureaucracy. I struggle to get my head around this whole concept of the Council of the Nations and Regions, when we've got, you know, elected Parliament, 650 MPs, and yet the Prime Minister's going to meet with this Council of Nations and Regions. What is all that about, really? So I think the whole thing's a disgrace, really, but we can't do anything about it. But I think the question has been well answered by put together, so I'll support it. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? No? Well, Councillor Patchett?
No, thank you, Chair. I just thought for balance, I should maybe say that I am quite excited about the idea of a mayor. It possibly gives me another person to write newspaper articles about and get in trouble, but it's by the by. I think it could be. It's got potential. I don't like the way that the government have gone about it and imposed it on counties and regions. I don't like that, but I do think I like the idea of actually having a sort of single voice for the region. It can, talking on behalf of Norfolk and Suffolk, it can bring sort of investment and infrastructure into the area. And I think, and I do disagree with some of our disagrees. I do think a mayor can have a positive impact, but I think, as Councillor Whitehead says, it's definitely person dependent. You could get an absolute cartoon character like Farage come in because he's only around the corner, and that's a kind of fear that you do get this kind of almost celebrity figure in that will win the popular vote, but they won't actually have a clue about the politics involved and the job involved. So that's definitely my fear. And I think because this is an exercise in closing that gate because the horse has definitely bolted, this is going to happen. So we have to be supportive and constructive about it. And I think in our chambers we do have some influence about how to sort of shape the powers that the mayor is going to have, because yes, the powers may be prescribed to the mayor from above, but the mayor can appoint deputies, and the mayor will have an office of the mayor as well, which we think could be up to maybe 400 people, which, yes, is definitely another tier of council. So, yes, we are losing 2-tier councils to gain another tier of council. As Councillor Whitehead said, and others, there's definitely a precept coming. We couple this with LGR, and we think, there's going to be savings. There probably aren't going to be any savings. For council taxpayers, I think their bill is going to be very similar, if not higher, than if we didn't do this. But I am excited about the mayor because I think it's coming regardless. So let's try and look at the positives, and let's perhaps, as councils, maybe shape the influence that the mayor has. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Padgett. Okay. So the road to the multiple combined county authority, it may present us opportunities, but may also be fraught with pitfalls. And I suppose the devil really is in the detail, and we're still awaiting for much of that to present itself. So I think on balance, the councillors and the officers who have worked on this response have done an incredibly good job in their response to this consultation. I think it's very well balanced, and yeah, I'd like to thank them for all the hard work and effort they've put into that. Councillor Mellon, would you like to add anything else?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can I just thank everyone for their contributions to the debate and to the officers for the work they put in drawing up this response. So what we are voting on now is delegating authority to me, but in consultation with the other group leaders to make any amendments that we think significant to the response. There isn't really much time to do that, so and I haven't heard kind of a lot of disagreement about what we've got there. But this is absolutely not a party political issue. This is, you know, this is where we're going to come together in consensus. As people have said, this is coming. We know that the mayor is coming, and whilst some of us may have significant reservations about this, the government does have, a new, strong democratic mandate from last year's general election. So we know this is part of their programme, and it's going to come through. The pace of it is occasionally quite worrying, but we understand what the government's trying to do. We understand the direction of travel, and we just have to try and make the best of it. I am concerned that this could end up in effectively a personality contest, and which way people will vote will depend on which football team the mayor supports, or something bizarre like that. But I do hope people will be significantly engaged, and it will be about policies and about vision and not just about personalities. There are places like Bristol who've had a mayor and decided they didn't actually want one in the end, and places like Sheffield who've always shied away from having one. So it's not something comprehensive across the country. But thank you everyone for your part in the debate, and I'll be glad if we can vote this through. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I will now ask the Acting Head of Governance and Civic Office to conduct the electronic votes.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress. Councillor Haddingham. Councillor Caston. Councillor Mansell.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Stringer. 4. Thank you. And Councillor Marriott. 4. Thank you. Thank you, members. That is 24 votes for.
Thank you. So that is carried. So in item 9, we are voting to note the decisions taken by the Chief Executive under the delegated powers in accordance with Part 2 of the Constitution. I would like to invite the Chief Executive to introduce this report.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll be extremely brief. As you'll see from the papers, Helmingham Parish Council, all of the parish councillors resigned. As with normal process, when that happens, we have the power to be able to insert some of our councillors on a temporary basis in order to enable the parish to be able to continue to function. I emphasise on a temporary basis until such time as they elect new parish councillors. So it's simply to report to council that that has happened.
Thank you very much. John Matheson, would you like to propose?
Yeah, I'd just like to propose that we note this report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Elkin, you happy to second?
Happy to second, Chair.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for clarification only? Councillor Caston?
Thank you very much. In the 8.1, the risk management, I think the impact and likelihood have got the wrong way round. So I'm sure it's meant to be the other way round. Just to
Thank you.
confirm that.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, Chair, that's correct. I do
Correct.
apologise.
No worries. Thank you. Does anybody else have a question? No? Okay. So the recommendation is that the Council notes the decisions taken under delegated powers by the Chief Executive. Unless members have any questions, I will intend to put this straight to the votes, which we've gone through. I will now ask the Acting Head of Governance and Civic Office to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress. Councillor Haddingham? Councillor Stringer? Councillor Mansell?
4.
Councillor Caston? 4. Councillor Marriott? Thank you. Thank you, members. That's 24 votes for, so that's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you, that's carried. Item 10, Councillor appointments. I refer you to the appointment included on the agenda. Are there any further changes to placings? No? Could I have a proposer, please?
Yeah, I'm happy to propose this, Chair.
Thank you very much. And can I have a seconder? Councillor Mansell, sorry.
Yeah, I'm
Thank
happy
you.
to second.
Are there any questions on this at all? No, excellent. I will now ask the Acting Head of Governance and Civic Office to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress. Councillor Haddingham? Councillor Caston?
4.
Councillor Mansell?
4.
Councillor Stringer? 4. And Councillor Marriott? Thank you. Thank you, members. That's 20 votes for, 24 votes for. Thank you.
Thank you, that is carried. So item 11, we've got the motion on notice. Before we go into this, I'm just planning to run the meeting through the agenda straight to the end, unless anybody would like a break. No one seems to want that at the moment, so that's great. We'll continue. So we're going to continue the motion on notice received from Councillor Richardson. Councillor Richardson, would you like to move your motion, please?
Thank you very much, Chair. The contents of this motion are, I hope, relatively self-explanatory, so I'll just give a broad overview of what we're seeking to achieve and why. When the simpler recycling paper originally came to the Council in September, paragraph 9.6 of the report said that wider public engagement wasn't necessary. Bluntly, I disagree, and I would have said so at the time had I been a councillor. Consulting with our residents is critical, particularly when this is the service that the majority of our residents will interact with most frequently. And it is clear that they have plenty to say about these changes. Like other rural councillors, I suspect, I often use my parish councils as a sounding board to seek their views on what Mid-Suffolk is doing. And I can say with certainty that both parish councils and members of the public who were in attendance, this issue generated significantly more comments, questions, concerns, queries in those meetings than local government reorganisation did, for example. I think most councillors will accept the need for consultation on changes that the council proposes where they have a significant impact on our residents. We agreed to an 8-week consultation on planning notification changes in February, and in March we approved a 6-week consultation on SIL charging rates. So I see no reason why this should be any different. This is important because, as the motion makes clear, the previous government was clear in its own intention that councils don't make any changes to the fortnightly weekly bin collections where they exist, as some, such as West Suffolk, are themselves doing. Now, the wording of this motion makes clear that we ought to debate the response to the public consultation, if indeed the motion is passed, but not be bound by it. So if councillors still believe that the approach agreed in September was the right one, then they are free to pursue that. But I do think it is important that we give our residents a say in these changes, as we have done on so many other issues recently. So I'm happy to propose this motion, Chair, and I'm grateful to Councillor Morgan for agreeing to second it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to second the motion. I believe this is the right time to revisit the issue, particularly after the scenes we've seen in Birmingham in recent weeks, with rubbish piling high and rats running wild, etc., etc., lots of vermin. I don't think these proposed changes have been properly thought through. An increase in food waste collection is welcome, but I know that many of my residents compost their food waste and still fill their black bins to the brim within 2 weeks. The easy answer in that scenario may just be to increase the number of black bins for each household, but for those living in terraced housing or more dense developments, that isn't always an option. And likewise, having incontinence briefs and disposable nappies, etc., rotting for 3 weeks at a time during the hot summer months will lower the quality of life for many in our communities. I support this motion wholly because it gives our residents the right to have their say on the issues that affect them, and I would encourage all councillors to support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now move to debate. Councillors will be allowed to speak once for 3 minutes, and this will be timed. Councillor Weller.
Thank you, Chair. Having given very careful consideration to this motion, I'm minded not to support it. Let me start by saying that public consultation on this matter isn't required by statute, and neither is it a requirement under the Council's Constitution. DEFRA states that it's a matter for councils to determine the frequency of waste collections, other than where the frequency is mandated by DEFRA. It's relevant to note that there was no opposition to the Cabinet decision reached on the 10th of September 2024, and it's accepted that Councillor Richardson wasn't a member of Council at that time, as he said, but neither were there any of the other 6 members of his party at that time present at the Cabinet meeting, and the decision wasn't called in. When the decision came to full Council for endorsement on the 26th of September 2024, the topic of public consultation again wasn't raised. At the endorsing full council, I recall thanking Councillor Caston for raising the important matter of disposal of continence items and nappies, particularly in households generating a volume of this waste. I was able to provide assurance that protocols deployed currently for any special circumstances would continue under the new regime, and I'm very happy to provide that assurance again today. I also recall Councillor Hicks, who isn't present today, but he also opposed 3 weekly residual waste collection, as did Councillor Whitehead, albeit under his previous party affiliation. But at no time during their questions, that debate, or subsequently, has the topic of public consultation been raised in or outside of this chamber. And I'd like to think I'm a fairly approachable kind of guy. Could have asked. I'm not clear why then, suddenly, it's now become a matter of great urgency that the public are consulted about a decision which was properly reached 6 months ago, but it's not my place to ask the real reason why this motion has been raised. As I set out in my response to Councillor Matheson's question at full council in February, there's been no opposition to the Council's decision on frequency from Suffolk County Council or the Suffolk Waste Partnership. I'd go one step further now to say that it's Suffolk County Council's preference that residual waste is collected less frequently, as this represents savings for that council by incurring fewer gate fees at our Energy from Waste facility. In reaching the decision, Cabinet received officer advice and research, which was subsequently presented to and endorsed by full council. And this included the fact that food waste accounts for 30 to 40% of the residual bin composition. Members have a graphic showing the average waste bin constitution, illustrating the position after 2 weeks. After 3 weeks, residual waste should therefore occupy around 60% of the bin, leaving 40% occupancy. Simply recycling weekly food waste collection creates additional capacity in the residual waste bin, and officers are working on additional solutions to support the existing exceptional cases at the curbside. That's so talking about the nappies and the continence aids. The new scheme increases overall recycling whilst reducing residual waste.
Sorry, would you like to wrap up, please?
I will wrap up. If the council were reducing the waste service provided to residents, of course we'd want to consult them, but we're actually enhancing the overall service. So I'm guessing that's why nobody in this chamber thought it necessary or relevant to seek public consultation when the decision was made or since. Thanks.
I'm wondering what the public would think about a public consultation taking place 6 months after that the decision has been taken. I think it might bring public consultation into disrepute and ridicule, so I'm firmly against this. Thank you.
Councillor Elkin?
Thank you, Chair. I think comparing this change in process to Birmingham isn't really a very sensible comparison, where you've got people on strike and sure that you've got piles of rubbish and rats, but we're talking about a perfectly normal, sensible bin collection process that already operates in lots of councils up and down the country, and I don't think they're overrun with rodents and they're not making front page news. So we are talking about something really different to that. And I think change is hard. None of us like change, having to remember what day to put the bins out. But I do think part of our role is to explain to people what's happening and to deal with problems that they might have or concerns, and not to scaremonger. Maybe my parish councils are different, but I have had people, when we were first talking about this, come to me with questions and say, you know, oh, I'm a bit worried about that, what's going to happen to the nappies? You know, and when I've said, as Councillor Weller said, that measures that are in place at the moment for things like medical waste will still be there, on the whole, people kind of got it. People were pro-recycling, willing to give it a go. So I think if we explain it sensibly, we try it, we take feedback, then I don't really see how it's going to be such a huge problem, and it already works well up and down the country in a number of councils of various different political flavours. So I'll be very happy to, I won't be happy to support the motion. Sorry, long day yesterday.
Thank you, Councillor Elkin. Councillor Mansell.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with what Councillor Elkins just said. I think comparing us to Birmingham is not the right thing to do. And I know that a couple of weeks ago there were some issues with staffing or bin lorries, and I think it actually particularly hit my ward quite badly. There were a lot of missed bins. But you know, when things like that happen, the team are responsive and things do get cleared up. Nobody likes change, and if you ask a resident if they want to have, I have my doubts about the way questionnaires are worded. We've just been discussing the government's consultation. Is it a consultation? Is it a questionnaire? I think you have to be very, very careful in the way you word questionnaires. I think if we put out a questionnaire that said, you know, do you want your black bin emptied every 2 weeks or emptied every 3 weeks, everyone's going to say 2 weeks because they don't want change and they don't know, they don't understand the process. So, and actually we as a council should be doing all that we can to educate our residents so that we actually reduce the amount of waste that is produced by every household on average. I am actually quite horrified at this pictorial thing that we've been given today, that 35% of a bin is food waste. I mean, that's just horrific. And if we are actually trying to help people to do more recycling, and yes, it will take time to change. If we spring a questionnaire on them saying, do you want this? They're going to say no. I mean, you can guarantee they'll say no. And then what do? We then have a debate about it, and it looks like we haven't taken into their consideration. I think we need to actually put this into practice and then have it as a review. We can review it once people have got used to it. They're not going to get used to it in a month. They're going to take about 6 months or so to, if not more, to actually get used to it, and then maybe they'll actually appreciate it. You know, we should be doing all we can. If we give them a 2 weekly bin collection and a food waste bin and all these other recycling bins, they've got more opportunity to fill bins, so they're going to be more waste. That's what worries me. We want to have less waste, not more waste. And people need to be educated in how to deal with their waste, because you know, manufacturers are not doing their side of the bargain. They're not reducing the amount of packaging sufficiently.
Thank you, Councillor Mansell. Councillor Caston?
Sorry, I thought someone was before me, but I'm quite happy to go. Would you?
Sorry, Councillor Davis, yes, and then Councillor Caston. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to embellish a little bit further on what my colleague was unable to in his time frame. Cabinet have looked at this in great detail, at great length, and had a lot of discussion. And when this change is implemented and happens, we're regarding year one of implementation as a pilot. And that's because residents haven't had the experience of 2 bins a week before, and 4 different kinds of bins, potentially, or potentially even 5. So, therefore, we're looking, and officers are ready to learn and act upon the experience of residents over this year, so we can embed the new regime in the waste teams and the residents and listen to feedback. The only way that we will do a good service is by listening, and it is a year-long term of listening. This data is going to be collected by officers and will be presented for analysis to overview and scrutiny for their review and recommendations. I cannot see in real terms and practical terms how else we could best serve our residents.
Thank you very much. Councillor Caston?
Thank you very much, Chair. Of course, I was against this before. I don't think this is going to work out very well. We've been given this printout on here. It's 240 litre bin, but then we've got a percentages by weight, and that doesn't really work for the bin because you don't fill your bin up with weight. Obviously, green waste is 34% because it's so much heavier. There's a lot more water content than cardboard or plastic and other things. So it's not ideal, this graphic, and it doesn't really tell me anything. But I don't agree that we should have a consultation on this. And the reason why is I understand where it's come from, and I understand the frustration at this because I have heard a lot of people that are very worried about these changes, but I understand the reason why you've done it. But a consultation now doesn't achieve anything. The decision's already been made. What do we do? It just takes us nowhere. Guess what? The consultation will say they don't want the bin because the people that reply to it will be the people that feel strongly about it. It's how every consultation works. It usually works in our benefit, people feeling strongly, but with something like this, I think you'll just hear from one voice. But a review is a brilliant idea. I think if we review this in time, see how it's working, because it might all come together. But at the moment, I'm sort of thinking, why would you do it to yourselves? Why would you go through this? Because I think it's going to be very, very bad politically for you. But so I won't vote for this just for those reasons. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Caston. Councillor Patchett?
Was Councillor Bradbury not before? No. Okay. Thank you, Chair. I do definitely agree in principle that the public should be consulted. But as Councillor Weller sort of alluded to, there have been ample opportunities in the past 6 months and at the appropriate time and place to sort of push forward these consultations. But I guess it's just, what is their fascination with rats? If they're not talking about them in the chamber, they're publishing pictures of them on their political literature. And the thing about rats is, they're very intelligent creatures, and they'll always do anything possible to survive, which may explain why on their sinking ship there's only 3 people left. Thank you.
Councillor Baker. Sorry, Councillor Bradbury. Sorry, Councillor Bradbury, I thought you didn't want to speak in the end. If you do, yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry for the confusion there. This is such an interesting debate. I just wanted to perhaps speak against Councillor Caston's concerns against the recycling. I mean, having spent some time recently in Stratford-upon-Avon, which has got a much improved recycling rate than we have, the residents there seem perfectly happy with the extra bins, at the risk of coming up with the problems that our former Prime Minister discussed with having 7 bins. Well, that there was a number of bins and the recycling was just so much easier, and that the residual waste bin was, it was where we stayed, was not full at all. So I don't think it's a problem. I do think the idea of review is a very good one, and I'd like to see that perhaps definitely implemented. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Baker.
So, a fellow councillor earlier made a really good point that it needs to be tested, and I really agree with that. You know, people need to have a go at these things. And I thought I'd lighten the mood, because when we finished full council last September and we had this debate, I went home and decided I was going to give this a go. So I got out some plastic tubs and we put some labels on, you know, in accordance with how the new structure is going to be, because I've got teenagers that it's going to be impossible to try and change the way we recycle and how we sort of manage our waste. And it's taken, you know, it took some weeks for them to understand what goes where, for us to explain, to put the labels in. So there has to be an element of testing for them to learn and for everybody to learn. And I think at that point, the feedback, things that work, you know, things that don't work, that review, that feedback should happen then. So, yeah, I think everybody needs to have a go at it and then work it through. And that's our path forward, I believe.
Thank you very much. Councillor Penny.
Well said, Councillor Caston, with much of what you said, and the answer of why we want to put ourselves through it is because we are ambitious. We are very much looking forward to rising to the challenge of improving our recycling from the very embarrassing position of being 204th in the list of county and district council's recycling table, which was where the last administration left us. So it's such a big issue. We really want to do something about it. So if Councillors Richardson and Morgan are concerned that they seem to be creating large quantities of rubbish, I suggest that before rushing out and buying replacements for everything, and why not consider upgrading things, repairing, reusing, recycling? Think about the things you buy. Think about buying things that last longer, things that are more sustainable. When you do have to put things in your residual waste bin, make sure you perhaps break them up if possible, so that they take up less space. Try to follow the rest of the country who do want to improve their rates of recycling. The truth is we're going to be collecting more waste and not less. Major food retailers are getting better at providing front of store or car park based solutions for collecting things like paper bags. So when you buy your frozen peas, there are places to take your bags back to. In some other parts of the country too, there are facilities for collecting small electrical items at the curbside or textiles, or perhaps the bring bank locations where they can largely be recycled or reused or repurposed, so we don't have to dump them. These are the directions we want to move in because we're ambitious. We know our residents want to recycle better, so we want to support them. I'm fully aware that on the doorstep a certain political party has been scaremongering about rats and spreading misleading information. And from the sound of it, I get the impression you're going to continue doing so. On the doorstep, when I speak to the residents you have spoken to, they are quite shocked with how they have been misled. And when I explain to them what is actually going to happen, they are relieved, pleased to hear it, and looking forward to participating. So we are going to be collecting more rubbish and not less. And I would strongly encourage you to support all of the programmes that we're bringing forwards through the Suffolk Waste Partnership and our own council. We have National Recycling Week coming up in September, the 22nd to 28th. There's an e-waste day in October, National Food Waste Week next year, 2nd to 8th of March. Please join us in promoting and supporting recycling and improving what we want to do. We would like to have a positive story. And as has been said, there will be special collections for those who really need it. We don't want the embarrassment of ending our term at being 204th in the recycling league table because we are ambitious. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Warboys.
Difficult to follow up, Councillor Pennant, but I'll make a few brief comments. First of all, this isn't a decision that's been made quickly. It's not been made on the back of an envelope. Over the last 2 years, we've been in meetings, cabinet meetings, briefings, and we've had council meetings where our officers have actually gone through the process, looked at the alternatives, and produced the current scheme. There's one huge plus for it. The possibility of smelly waste is going to be dramatically reduced because the waste food is going to be collected weekly. And instead of being incinerated at sewers, it will go to be producing energy. It will be not composted, the other way, anaerobically digested. I've visited Suez, which is our Suffolk's incinerator, where our rubbish goes to, the residual rubbish that's in the black bins. It's incredibly efficiently run, and considering what it does, it's very clean, but it's quite horrific as well. You can see a day's rubbish from Suffolk piling up and being incinerated, consuming huge amounts of diesel and producing possibly the dirtiest electricity possible. This is a logical solution to what is a problem that needs to be resolved pragmatically. It is a very cost-effective solution. If we collected the waste, the residual waste bins more regularly, it would involve purchasing more waste collectors, whether it's men or machines. It would be incredibly time-consuming. So this is a cost-effective process based on the amounts of rubbish that are being collected at present. It makes sense now to go for our pilot scheme. This was produced in 2019, shows that our waste collection is being reviewed regularly, and allowances are made for people who, for some circumstances, are producing more rubbish than usual. And these processes will continue. I think we've got a very good scheme. We've spent hours of officer time on it. They have diligently researched what happens across the rest of the country. And like all consultations, once a consultation becomes politicised, where one... Sorry?
Can we summarise, please?
Okay, where one party is putting one scheme forward and throwing and spreading misinformation, then it becomes difficult to get a proper answer to a consultation. So we need to run the pilot scheme, and we then need to review the success of that scheme and identify what the practical problems are. Thank you. Sorry for running over.
Okay. Councillor Mellon.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think the changes that are coming in are a very positive change, and in fact I'm confident that once things settle down, people will adapt to these changes and they will appreciate them, and our recycling rates will shoot up that league table. But I'm aware we need to get this right, and I totally understand the fact that our administration is on the line with this one. So what do? Do we respond to the noise that's there around this, or do we make the right decision and stick with it? I think this is the right decision. We're not taking away 2 weekly bin collections. We're effectively doubling the number of collections each week. I was recently at a training event in Warwick, an LGA training, a number of leaders of different councils there, and I got chatting to Councillor Adam Brown from West Northamptonshire. I actually spent 6 days on leaders training with him. A really nice guy. He's up for election at the moment, so he's out there campaigning. But I did discuss with him about, what's your situation in terms of bins? When do you collect the bins? And they are in a 3 weekly residual rotation. And I said, well, that must be quite controversial when you brought that in. He said, not at all, no. Everyone's used to it. They know what happens. The system has settled down. We don't hear any noise about it at all. Just to report that he is a Conservative leader of a council. So there are rural areas that are already doing this, and it's fine. And I take some confidence from that. So unfortunately, I don't think I can support this motion because I think it is politically motivated to create a noise around this issue. We are doing the right thing, and we'll push through with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mellon. Councillor Rowe.
As has been mentioned about how much people actually engage with consultations, I think this one is slightly different from some previous ones, with it not being a change to the current system. There's a new system coming in, and then we'd be discussing one part of that new system. And to get a consultation where, more engagement, just asking people a question, you'd have people who just go, I don't know, I haven't kind of experienced it, so I kind of haven't got strong feelings either way. And you'd have people who do have strong feelings and would engage, but I think kind of you'd have people who wouldn't actually feel comfortable being consulted about something that they don't have any experience of unless they've gone elsewhere. And personally, I've heard people who've experienced stuff elsewhere and they found it quite good. And there is an element of we're a green-run council. I don't think it's a surprise to people if we look at how to maximise recycling, which this approach is going to do. I think it's important that it's pilot, and that when people have experienced it, then kind of we look at people's experience. And so I don't support this motion because I think for a kind of actually having people more engaged with what's happening, running the pilot is a better way than running a consultation, asking people, and there'll be plenty of people who just wouldn't know how to answer the questions and would be disengaged because they would kind of just shrug at it, basically.
Thank you very much. Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Chair. In a democracy, public consultations are important, but the public need to be not only properly engaged, but also need to have all the pertinent information at hand in an understandable form in order to make an informed and not an emotional decision. When it comes to things like the frequency of bin collections and the economics of the collection and disposal of waste, it is a very complex financial assessment required to come to a correct answer. So I'd rather leave the logistics and economics to our expert waste collection team advising councillors rather than put out this complex decision to public consultation. Incidentally, this graphic does concern me because percentages there add up to 100.4%, which means the lid won't close and a bill won't be collected. Thank you.
Councillor Stringer.
Yeah, I think you'll find the 0.4% just leaves it at the angle where it will actually be collected. So it just fits under the lid. So there you go. Yeah, I mean, let's be plain about what this is. In 2003, I'm old enough to know when the twin bin came in. Every single week, the council used to collect a bin that we had to buy for ourselves. So every single week, your residual waste, your refuse went. There was a 50% decrease in that collection. No consultation. A little leaflet came through the door, very well explained, but that happened. No public consultation. That was a Conservative administration of this council that implemented a 50% cut in our refuse collection. Done. Yes, there were teething problems. Of course there would when you're moving to recycling their work. But, you know, that Conservative administration did a very good job of that. Our staff were absolutely brilliant. So, why are we being asked to do a consultation now? The time to ask for a consultation on this issue was when we made the decision all those months ago. But of course, there's a sort of reason behind this, and we've seen this before. And the actual motion lays it out quite clear. It asks to only consult on the changes to the refuse. It doesn't ask to consult about the changes to recycling, purely the refuse. And of course we've seen it in literature, the same issue. The picture of the rats, the reference to rats, we've seen in election material in Mid-Suffolk. And for a particular political party, that literature could be deemed as being successful. But actually, I'll give you a slight warning. I was a minor part in that election campaign, which my party didn't win that particular county by-election. But in the previous election to that county council seat, there was over 650 majority for the Conservative Party. After they did the campaign attacking us about with pictures of rats, etc., and all the bins, that majority shrank to 4. So carry on if you want to make it an issue, because on the doorstep, it's quite clear. Yes, there are legitimate concerns, but there is a review going to happen for this. We recognise it's a major move, and actually we could be politically timid and back away, thinking the timing's not right. We're a bit frightened about all this, it will be changed, we might not get elected. We have the courage of our convictions, we have the courage of our staff, and we have the courage to adapt if it isn't quite working. And what's not going to be told, if you're going to have a consultation, it needs to be meaningful. And if it's not going to be meaningful, you do a disservice to all those people that you ask. You need to put, as Councillor Whitehead said, all of the information in front of them, and the vital bit of information you need to put in front of them. If you wanted to say, do you want to keep bi-weekly residual collection, is how much are you prepared to pay, or how much are you prepared to recycle less? And until you put that qualitative information in that motion, frankly, this is just political opportunism, and I will not be supporting this motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stringer. Was there anybody else who would like to speak? No? Okay. Councillor Richardson, do you wish to add anything?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a few brief points. First of all, I think I just want to address some of the, confusion over the timing of the bringing forward of this motion. Just a couple of points. One is that the Overview and Scrutiny Committee doesn't have the power to call in decisions of the full council, so that wasn't a route that was available. As for why it's taken this long to bring forward the motion, I would just refer members to paragraph 14.4 of the council procedure rules, that the full council can't revisit the same issue within a 6-month period. Therefore, on that basis, the earliest opportunity to bring forward this motion would have been the March meeting, which we did, but we agreed to defer it to this meeting so that we could accommodate time on the agenda for the tributes to Rachel Eburn. I think one of the things that's been kind of touched upon is that there is an opportunity, I think, to educate and to inform. I think this is an absolutely, or could have been, a great opportunity to do that. I didn't specify in the motion what content we needed to share with the public. I didn't even specify it had to be a yes or no question or a multiple choice question. We could have given our residents the information, used it as an opportunity to educate them, which would have been a fantastic opportunity. What struck me actually is in some of the parish council meetings that I've been at, not only have there been concerns raised, what's also been striking is the number of people who aren't aware that this is happening, which obviously now I'm sure the council will want to do future engagement and communication around these changes, but actually this would have been a perfect opportunity to do that, to get residents' voices heard. And I think to the question of, is this the right time? Well, decisions can be changed. There's nothing to say that we couldn't come back and say, well, if we did a consultation, the response was X, let's revisit the decision. You'll forgive me if I don't find it a particularly strong argument that on the one hand we've just criticised the government for not doing a meaningful consultation, only for us to do the same. I mean, denying residents the right to have a say because we're worried what their answer might be is not a strong argument at all. So I am disappointed, Chair, but I will leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Richardson. I will now ask the Acting Head of Governance and Civic Office to conduct the electronic votes.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress. Councillor Marriott, may I take your vote, please? Against. Councillor Headingham? Against. Councillor Caston? Against. Councillor Stringer?
Against.
And Councillor Mansell?
Against.
Thank you. Thank you, members. That is 22 votes against. Sorry, let me do this other way around. That's 2 votes for and 22 votes against.
We'll move on to item 11B, to consider the motion on notice received from Councillor Stringer. Councillor Stringer, would you like to move your motion?
Yes, I will. Thank you, Chair. Feels like I've only just sat down. Right, yes. Motion regarding performance of our planning department. This motion acknowledges the huge amount of work and valued work that our planning team, staff and councillors and our parishes and residents play in the planning system. And it also acknowledges that the government wants to see changes. It wants to address housing shortfalls, and we understand that. But the changes in the Planning and Infrastructure Bill are pushing in areas that we think we should make plain that we're uncomfortable with, and we think that are terribly unfair. And unfair because the evidence of our own eyes, our own communities and our own council. I want to pay tribute actually to our own planning committee that had a massive mammoth session yesterday. And I almost felt guilty about going from 2 committees down to 1, but we stick by that decision because we believe that acknowledging the work, the hard work that you put in, and getting some recompense for that, but also having a committee that we agree is very professional in what it does, and also the value that it adds, and that's the important bit. We think with this current bill that the government is using the issue of targets over quality of decision. And that's something this administration takes very seriously. And actually I have, as a planning committee in various chambers for over 20 years, I've often had sessions in there that have gone on longer than that, probably because of my verbose input. But
you do at the end of the day then think, well, actually, I've been sitting here debating for 5-6 hours. What value have I added to that process? And if we look through just yesterday, the government is trying to almost accuse us of being blockers. Yet yesterday, our planning committee approved huge retail investment in our biggest town, millions of pounds worth of investment. Reserve matters on 127 dwellings in one of our towns. But most importantly, the value added there was that it made sure that those reserve matters adhered to the public expression in its neighbourhood plan. That's value added. Absolutely brilliant. It also looked at a solar farm where there'd been matters of support and adjudicated on that, all the way down to a single dwelling in Stowmarket that was quite pivotal, edge of a conservation area, very sensitive, and there was a decision made on that. Well done for the value that you added in that process. And I think in this infrastructure bill, it's plain that the government's not quite understanding what could be lost. And I'll tell you for why, it's what it measures. If you don't measure something, you don't value it. The government wants us to measure all of the planning committee overturns. That's when an officer says, yes, I think we should approve this. The committee says no, and then it goes to appeal, and the appeal inspector goes, no, I'm going to approve that. The planning committee didn't look at this policy correctly or didn't weight that one correctly, so I overturned it. The government wants us to measure all of the committee overturns that refused against the officer. What it's not asking us to write down are all the committee overturns that refuse an application where the appeal inspector upholds that refusal. Now, if that's not a one-sided argument and a bunch of statistics, I don't know. I've had personal experience of this planning committee looking at an item in one of my parishes where we went and had a look because it involved a neighbourhood plan issue and it was all quite sensitive. Officer wanted to say yes on balance. Planning committee said no. It went to appeal. The appeal inspector went out, had a look himself and said, do you know, I agree with that committee, I agree with that parish council, and I agree to uphold the sensitivity of that neighbourhood plan. A superb decision and a perfect example of value added by the process that we have. Now, there's a number of bits in the planning bill that wants to update and upgrade and modernise planning committees. Now, you might say, oh, down on that sort of thing. We've actually done loads of that already. When I first started here, we regularly had 18 items at committee because just a simple parish saying yes and the officer saying no or vice versa would trigger it going to committee. We are already one of the most efficient committee systems in the country in terms of our planning. We're now dealing with applications that are very major in a very timely way. And for any legislation to assume that we are in any way blockers, I think it is wrong, which is why we want to write to the government and express our concerns about what is in this bill. We also want to make sure that our planning system should fully align with the duties under the Climate Act 2008, because equally we can see some of those areas being eroded, and you've probably seen in the media where things for biodiversity have been ridiculed as if they're holding up planning, when in fact the reverse has sometimes been the case. So the motion is quite simple. You can see it on page 2 of your supplementary papers. And Chairman, I move the motion and look for a seconder.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stringer. Councillor Mellon, you would like to second?
Yeah, I'll second and I'll speak now if that's okay, Chair.
Thank you, yes.
I think this motion is important. I think as we need to, as locally elected community representatives, push back on the government's rhetoric in recent months. Now, we're all aware there's a housing crisis and that homes are simply affordable for many people to buy, even on average incomes. And the results of this crisis are clear. We've got over 100,000 families across the country living in temporary accommodation. We have a long list of people signed up for our council housing. And then we have this continuing problem of homelessness, or the risk of homelessness. Although I do acknowledge the great work that's been done by our prevention team here at Mid-Suffolk and Baber. Yet, listening to the government, you would think that the substantial part of the blame for this is due to local planning authorities and their pesky committees. We are apparently the blockers, and if only we would stop holding back those poor developers with our ridiculous insistence on protecting newts or spurious concerns about the effects of cumulative development, then Britain could get building again. So we have this planning and infrastructure bill that the government's put forward with a range of measures designed to address the delivery of new homes. Now, I have to say, as Councillor Stringer said, some of those measures are welcome and could help. For example, the reintroduction of strategic planning, the ability to set planning fees locally, and changes to the compulsory purchase powers. However, alongside this are proposals which would reduce the role of democratically elected councillors in the planning process by limiting what applications would come to committee and reducing the opportunities for call-in. I want to assert that democracy is not an optional extra. It's actually a core component of an effective planning system. Residents should have a say over the future of their place through their local councillors. That's why they vote for us. And I also take issue with the assertion that planning committees are blockers of planning permissions. In fact, we are enablers. Planning committees approve the overwhelming majority of applications that come their way. And as Councillor Stringer said, they add value by providing an opportunity for local voices to be heard, which can bring communities on side with new development and add value and prevent poor development. So while this bill focuses on streamlining the planning process, it is a missed opportunity, because the biggest issue in the delivery of homes is the fact that homes that have planning permission are not built out fully and quickly. Councils approve 90% of the applications they receive, but it is estimated there's over 1 million applications that have been approved but have not yet been built. In fact, the figure may be as high as 1.4 million permissions unbuilt. Taking it right down to the local level, I have a site in my ward which has permission for 14 homes. The developer's done a small bit of enabling work, and therefore the permission has commenced and it can't be expired. But nothing more's been done. So I think councils need tools to encourage build out. A couple of possible examples of this: the ability to charge council tax or a proportion of council tax on homes that have been permissioned but not completed after a set deadline, or the ability to set deadlines on completion with penalties, just as we set expiry dates for developments that have not commenced. Lastly, I think it's really important that the changes to the planning system are explicitly connected to the legally binding commitments this country has made on reducing emissions. The Climate Change Act of 2008 was, in my opinion, a far-sighted and potentially far-reaching piece of legislation, enshrining that target of net zero by 2050. And it's had very good cross-party support until recently. But whilst it's great to have that destination to aim for, you need a roadmap to get you there. And that's why legislation such as this bill needs to be explicitly linked to the Climate Change Act, so that the type of houses we built help deliver those emission reductions. So I hope members will support this motion, and then we can communicate our concerns about it to government while this bill is in the legislative process. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll be brief because I think I just about agree with everything within this motion. A couple of points I do just want to make, which I think have been raised already, is particularly the strength and the importance of planning committees. Not only are they an enabler, but actually I've seen numerous examples where our planning committees, which have been ably led in the past and currently, have actually managed to secure improvements to planning applications as they have gone through the process. They've been, in fact, even the prospect of the planning committee not supporting a motion has enabled me as a ward member to secure additional mitigations from developers before it's even got to the planning committee. The recent one in Thurston being a perfect example. It's interesting, isn't it, that I think we're all agreed on the value of the planning committee as a function of the local planning authority, but it's worth noting that 96% of all planning applications across the country are determined by officers, not the planning committee. So quite how the government thinks that reducing the role of the planning committee is going to suddenly free up thousands of new homes is just ludicrous. So I'm strongly in favour of this motion. I can't quite recall off the top of my head, Chair, whether this is just speculation or whether it is within the bill, but I have seen it written that one of the potential changes that the government are considering is a cap on the number of dwellings that a planning application would would need to have before it goes to committee, and I think that number is 100 plus, which I think is utterly absurd. For a rural area like Mid-Suffolk, I mean, obviously, if I give Thurston as an example, yes, all of the major ones were significantly above that, but for some of our smaller rural communities, developments of 80, 90 houses could have a similar, as a proportion, effect on those communities, and I think it's absolutely right that we have the ability to debate those and to make decisions on behalf of our representatives. I've always found it helpful. I was briefly on the planning committee, but I've always found it helpful that I've been able to go and attend those meetings as a ward representative or submit my views so that I can put across not just my own personal opinion, but that of the people that I represent. So I agree with both the content of this motion and the recommendation, so I'll be voting in favour of it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Richardson. Councillor Matheson.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I very much welcome this motion. The Green Party is clear that we actually need 1.5 million extra homes built over the next term of government. But they must actually accurately address the need, which, you know, bunging up lots of executive 4 bedrooms, we know that is not where the primary need is. So both our housing officers and our committees try to work to housing need in particular. I think Councillor Stringer has suggested that the government don't quite understand. Well, absolutely, they just don't understand how the housing market and the planning system interact. We've watched that unfold over the years, and I've been on the planning committee a lot of years. And what we do not need is to increase the land bank, as it's called, which Councillor Mellon has said that the most recent estimates say it might be as high as 1.4 million. Well, there's not much point in bunging that up to 1.5 or 1.6. So the mechanisms that we need to get them delivered is called for, and that's great. And I should just finally remind members of our budget meeting in February, when we looked at the housing revenue account, and we could see that we cannot afford to commission the new extra council homes that we know that the public need. And that is a frustration additionally, which is also stopping us from getting the 1.5 million that the country needs. So I will be supporting this very wholeheartedly.
Councillor Caston.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I agree with this, and it's very much because of the wording, which I'll go into in a minute. But it's good to hear Councillor Stringer saying how pleased he was about all the applications being approved. I thought it's good on this council to have a portfolio holder that understands that we do need to build out, because we have to be put into special measures, and a lot of we need to approve or we get put into special measures. And a lot of people's worry about the Green Party was that there wouldn't be the growth and the need wouldn't be met. And the planning committee is working extremely well. I was recently at a planning committee which didn't go in my favour, but it was discussed with a lot of knowledge, and a decision was made using all the facts in place, and you can't ask any more of that. But the actual wording that I wanted to talk about, so I've thought about this a lot for the unbuilt out planning permissions, and do we want to start charging council tax after 4 years, business rates or something like that. But we have to be really careful, and we are being careful, because it says that the government considers giving council powers to advance the build-out sites with planning permission. And if I thought that was penalising, it's the carrot or the stick. If I thought that was the stick, I'd say that's a really bad idea, because a lot of these sites are brownfield, and the reason why they're not built out is they're not viable. And if we start using a stick, like bringing in council tax or something like that, people won't touch them with a barge pole. They'll never have that planning permission. So that's better. It's better to have that. If we have a carrot there, I think that's how we need to approach it, because everybody wants to build on green fields. They want to build on agricultural land, things like that. It's easy. There's not that many of those sort of permissions that don't get done because it's cheap and easy. But it's the brownfield that we really need to look at. So yeah, fully support this. I think we need to do it. I think the government needs to leave us alone and let us decide what we need because we're making some really good decisions out there, and I think it's important to have that local knowledge. So I will be supporting that, and I'll thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Caston. Councillor Mansell?
Thank you, Chair. I will certainly be supporting this motion. I might be out of a job if I don't. So I think there is a misconception that the government have got that the broken housing system is the fault of planning departments. I don't know where they get this idea. I certainly don't think it's the case. And developers will build what they are going to make money out of. And I think, in some respects, the government are being so hypocritical. We've just been discussing the Devolution white paper and local government review, where they go on and on about wanting the public to have a better trust in democracy. Well, where else is that better represented as in a planning committee, where, as Councillor Stringer has said, planning committee is where we can add the value. And we listen to the concerns of the parishes, we listen to the concerns of residents, and we have the ability to give different amounts of weight to the planning policies, and we can add more conditions, tweak the conditions that the officer is recommending, and we are responding to the public, and they can see that we are responding to the public. A planning decision is not a simple case of black and white. We have our planning policies. They often conflict with one another, and it's all about how much weight do you give policy A over policy B. And I think the committee is where those decisions should be made, where we have a democratic voice, we are accountable, and we are listening to members of the public and the parishes. I also welcome the business about trying to advance build-out of sites with planning permission. We regularly come up with sites at planning committee that got outline permission so many years ago that the policies have now changed, but those conditions that are on the outline permission are set in stone, and we can't then tweak it. In fact, I think the case in yesterday was a case in point. It got its outline permission a while back, before we had our new local plan, before the biodiversity net gain rules came in, and there were so many things that we wanted to do that we couldn't do. So in doing something about that time delay between outline and getting reserved matters, I think is also important, as well as getting those sites built out. I will certainly be supporting this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mansell. Councillor Whitehead?
Thank you, Chair. Yep, there are lots of very positive things in here in terms of the performance of our planning department and the fact that the changes the government are proposing will certainly curtail the role of democracy and elected councillors in the planning process. I'm a bit concerned about whether the explicit requirements of the Climate Change Act, what effect they might have on permissions. The bit that does concern me more, though, is about the council seeking measures and powers to expedite build-out of consented sites and giving councils power to advance the build-out of sites with planning permission. I think we've heard from Councillor Caston about the carrot and stick issues there. And this morning I was looking at a planning permission that's been about a quarter of it's been delivered. The rest of it seems to be totally stalled and not delivered. It's for 94 residential properties, and A1 retail, and it was decided in October 19. The applicant certainly put a lot of effort into this because there were 200 documents on the initial application. There's been 8 non-material amendments, 17 discharges of condition, and yet the site remains derelict. Listed building is perhaps at risk, and should the council seek a stick to bring this applicant to order? The application is 1805104. It's referred to as former council offices and land at Mid-Suffolk District Council in Needham. So if that one's stalled and can't be brought forward, it seems a bit hypocritical to me that to be trying to use a stick against private developers who've got they've got an obligation to their shareholders to bring these things forward in a profitable and meaningful situation. But if the council itself can't bring its own site forward, I question what powers the council might need to expedite it. Thank you.
Councillor Elkin.
I'm a relatively new member of the Planning Committee. I've only been on it a couple of years, but the debate earlier on, one of the phrases the government is using with their devolution sort of progress is meaningful geographies, decisions being taken in terms of meaningful geographies. And on a fairly small planning committee, between us all, usually somebody knows the village or the street or the house or the community that we're talking about and can bring some often really useful bits of information that have changed sort of actual buildings that are being made where streets are, dangerous junctions are being adapted. So I think it is a really useful role that planning committees have, as well as being obviously a forum for members of the public to come and express their views and to have those heard. I'd just like to say if there's ever a public award for services to bike paths, then I'd like to nominate Councillor Mansell, because there are a lot of people cycling more safely around Mid-Suffolk who wouldn't be if it wasn't for her work on the planning committee. And I will definitely be supporting this.
Thank you very much. Would anybody else like to comment? Councillor Marriott.
Just briefly, I agree with much of what has been said, particularly what Councillor Mansell said. But I did read some of this planning and infrastructure bill, and at the time I was sort of disturbed by the way that the government were disparaging planning committees. So I'm glad some action has been taken on it. Thank you.
Very much. Councillor Stringer, do you wish to add anything?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, sorry about that. Sorry, you had 8 hours of fun yesterday. I've had about 8 minutes. First of all, I want to thank Councillor Caston for your comments. They're very, very kind. It is an interesting thing because planning is always portrayed in the media as these blockers, and they're worrying about this and whinging about that. And why can't they just get on with it? Well, there's a good reason for that. And often the delays aren't the planners. It is those that feed the documents into the planners and the people that survey things that just get over the bar to make it a valid application and then slow up on everything else, and that does grind the system to a bit of a halt, and we have to then try and deal with the carnage. Meanwhile, a client wants their decision yesterday because they've got this investment ready to go. So it is a bit of a juggling act. Also, I think it's important that we respond to government on this, purely because of that word engagement. We were talking earlier about the public consultation the government had run over changing the entire political structure of a couple of counties, and how many people turned up? 20 odd. Yesterday, 380 people watched that planning committee. Now, I know White Lotus season 3's ended and there's not much on the telly, but that's remarkable. So what? Yeah, I take it they were whipped up about the retail thing in Stowmarket or the solar farm, but that shows you that us that are passionate about planning and what planning can do for people is actually completely valid. That's remarkable. 380 people watched it. And it's almost a bit like justice, really. I always think planning's a bit like justice. It not only has to be done, but it needs to be seen to be done. And there's a great democratisation, I think, about planning. in that I've often come here and failed miserably to overturn an application or to get one approved against the officer or whatever it is. But at least when you go back to that community and they can physically now see what you're trying to do, or if you've got that little tiny amendment, I've often gone back to communities and said, I'm really sorry, I couldn't get that refused. And they go, yeah, but you got that little footpath sorted out there. That's fine, thank you. Thank you for at least trying, getting us engaged, and actually, more importantly, making a difference, however small that difference is. And if you ever want to see, it's rather like the thing in Monty Python, you know, what's the planning committee ever done for us? And certainly, I mean, in Thurston, I probably daren't say that, but in Bacton, I can say that. I'm not glib about Thurston at all. It is what's happened during the lack of 5-year land supply years in Thurston. It is a warning and a challenge to all. And we're still grappling with that challenge, you know, years and years later, and we will do. I don't underestimate that. But in the village that I live very close to, and our leader is District Councillor of Bacton, we've had quite a lot of rampant development in Bacton. It's literally doubled in size, and if you ask anyone, there's often people say, well, yeah, what good did you do with the planning committees? And I tell you what good they did. Against any written policy of huge note, every single one of those houses has an air source heat pump. Every single one of those houses has cabling for an electric vehicle. And the vast majority of those houses are orientated so they can have solar panels, or they physically have solar panels on. So that's what value a planning committee can do, is actually, in a small way, hold a government to account while trying to get some of the aspirations of a community. So thank you for all the supportive comments. We'll gladly write to government, and thank you for your input.
Thank you, Councillor Stringer. I'm hearing a lot of positive words for our planning officers and the planning committee, and I thank those officers and committees for engaging our communities and adding value to those planning decisions and delivering better outcomes for them. It is clear that we as a council are really passionate that decisions are taken locally by people embedded within our communities with their knowledge and experience of their geographies. So I thank everyone on those planning committees and officers and everyone else involved. I will now ask the Acting Head of Governance and the Civic Office to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress. Councillor Mansell, may I take your vote, please?
For.
Councillor Headingham? For. Thank you. Councillor Marriott? Thank you. Councillor Carston?
For.
And Councillor Stringer?
For.
Thank you. Thank you, members. That is 23 votes for and 1 abstention.
Thank you very much. That is carried. The next meeting is the annual council meeting on Thursday, the 15th of May at 5:30. I wish you all a very good Easter weekend. Don't eat too many chocolate eggs. I declare this meeting closed at 7:45.